Hey yo, what's good reader fam? Welcome back to my channel. It's the second meeting for Manga Monday Book Club today, and today we're going to be discussing volumes 1 and 2 of Death Note, aka the entirety of Death Note Black Edition Volume 1. If you don't know what Manga Monday Book Club is, I will leave a link down below in the description to a video with more information on that. Our next meeting will be on August 12th and we'll be discussing My Hero Academia Volume 2. But today is all about Death Note. We're going to be diving deep into the story and discussing it in full. If you don't know anything about Death Note, then let me fill you in a little bit before we get into Spoiler Town. In this story, we follow a boy named Light Yagami who is one day minding his own business when he comes across a Death Note. If he writes the name of a person in the notebook and knows what they look like, then that person will die. With this newfound power, with this Death Note, Light decides that he is going to create a utopia. That's just a little insight as to what you get with the story. Obviously, a lot more happens, but you're gonna have to read it to find out. We are gonna be jumping right into a discussion, so if you have not read this, go read it, come back, and then discuss with us. If you have read it, then let's get started. Let's get it. Chapter 1. We start off with Ryuk dropping the Death Note into the human world and Light Yagami comes across it, and I like the fact that he kind of didn't believe it at first. He's like, LOL, sure Jan. You're telling me that if I write a name in here they'll die? You landed with the wrong genius. He even compares it to chainmail, which he's not far off with that comparison, except for the fact that it actually works. It's interesting to right off the bat kind of see some parallels between Light and Ryuk. They're both kind of going through the motions of this rather mundane life. They're both really bored. It feels like they're both at a point in their lives where they're ready to add some excitement. We're kind of given this bait that Light is really smart, which honestly, at that point, I didn't realize how smart he was until you get deeper into the story and you see his mastermind thinking. But it makes sense that he's placed first twice in a practice college exam. It was crazy seeing the amount of names that Light had written in only 5 days. He went from not believing it at all to killing people on the daily. I keep coming back to this conversation that Ryuk and Light are having, so there really is no price to pay for using the Death Note. Well, not exactly. Then a few slides later it says, when you die I'll be the one writing your name down. Don't think that any humans who use the Death Note can go to heaven or to hell. You'll find out about that after you die. So this has my mind thinking that maybe, potentially, people who use the Death Note in the human world end up becoming Shinigami after they die. Do you think that's a far off theory? Am I alone in thinking that? Ryuk's reasoning for dropping the Death Note was so twisted when you think about it. He literally did it because he was bored, meaning he's now going to get entertainment on the trials of a human using the Death Note. That's jacked up if you ask me. Of course, then we get the jacked up reasoning as to why Light wrote down so many names in the past 5 days, and that's the fact that he was bored too. This is a recipe for disaster. It's really wild how this book kind of makes you feel mixed up when you first start reading it. Because when you first find out that Light is killing off people who have done evil acts, it's like, that's cool. He's trying to make the world a better place. But then everything just kind of starts to sink in and it's like, oh, he's taking the lives of people into his own hands. And he's becoming the ultimate judge of if they should stay or if they should die. And that's where it's like, crap. On one hand, he wants to create a better world, but is he going about it in the best way possible? Questionable. And he himself is becoming a murderer and using the Death Note, so when we begin to see more of Light's life, it's crazy to think that he would get wrapped up in something like this. He's incredibly smart, he's got a good thing going for him, and he's gonna get messed up and swept away in this. I feel like this just shows what having power like that can do to you. He shows very little signs of regret or guilt with the killings, especially as we get farther into it. Right off the bat, we do see him kind of worrying about what he's doing, and he asks himself if he feels like he can do it. But I feel like for the most part, he's just in a state of shock of the fact that the Death Note actually works. He's convinced himself that he's doing a good service by killing these people, and he's going to let that be his driving force for cleaning up the world. I also find it interesting that he's making it a part of his plan to be known. He wants the world to know that there is someone out there controlling all of this. You'd think that he'd want to do his best to keep it all under wraps, but that ain't the case. Chapter 2. I'm really impressed with Light's ability to maintain sanity while being at the top of his class and also using the Death Note on the daily. The devil works hard, but Light Yagami works harder. Something that I really like about this is that we're not only getting Light's perspective, but we're getting the perspective of the police and the links that they're going to track down Kira, even if it is straight up chaos on their end. As it should be though, because they have no idea what could possibly be happening. We're introduced to the iconic L, who is this super mega genius that they're gonna bring into the case and kind of help them figure out who Kira is. Though I will say that it's really interesting to me that he's not suspected right away. Like, he's such a suspicious figure when you think about it. They can only communicate communicate with him through another person and they can't see him, like, red flag. So Light's killer side has been given a name by the public. They're calling him Kira. And I do find his thoughts on all of this really interesting. How there are people who are secretly out there rooting for him and making these fan pages for him online. They'd never outright come out and say that they're rooting for him, but they're secretly agreeing with all that he's doing. L really pulls a quickie on Light using that broadcast that he orchestrated using a criminal as his stand-in. And it reveals two very strong clues. One, how Kira can kill without direct contact. And two, it was only televised in the Kanto region by Tokyo, so that kind of narrows it down. And Light is pissed, as he should be. He's not getting his way with his plan, so he's full on raging. Chapter 3. It's rumored that Ryuk has 2 death notes, which really fascinates me. Like, how does a death god even obtain 2 death notes? Can he drop both of them at the same time? Also, I really want to know how many pages are in a death note. Also, can you write names on top of other names once you've run out of space? I'm just really curious to know what Light's gonna do when he runs out of space in his death note. I love how Ryuk waits to mention things like the fact that if somebody touches the death note, they can see him. He says this right as Light's little sister comes into his room. Thanks a lot for the heads up, Ryuk. You can tell that Kira is really weighing down on everyone in the police force. It probably doesn't help that there are morons out there claiming to know Kira or even claiming to be Kira themselves. But everyone's just on edge, even questioning the things that they're saying. Like how the officer mentioned the fact that the crime rate was going down. He's quickly like, I probably shouldn't have said that. We get one of my favorite plot twists ever. Turns out that the chief of the police force is actually Light's dad. I remember being so shook when I found that out for the first time. It's actually wild to see how highly Light's family think of him. He's the goody two-shoes and the smarty in the family. I don't even know how Light is able to hold a conversation with his father knowing everything that he's done. But I guess that could be because he feels like he's in the right and he doesn't feel like he's done anything wrong. I don't know. On the flip side though, having his dad as the chief investigator will give him an advantage. It's been a minute since I've read this series and been a minute since I've watched the anime, so I don't know what happens down the line. But what if at some point Light does have to take out his father? Because it could very likely end up at that point. Light would for sure be getting away with everything had L not come into the investigation, because literally the police are thrown out of whack with every move that Light makes. And L is the one to hone them in and be like, wake the heck up and smell the Kira roses. Okay, so wow, the ending of this chapter where Light mentions the fact that he could get to a point where he's going to have to kill his family. Excuse me, what? It's interesting too how he doesn't even say how I'd have to do it. He says Kira would have to do it. It's almost like he's using Kira as a way to justify having to do it at some point, and using it as a way to be like, I won't be the one doing the dirty work, it'll be Kira. So twisted. Chapter 4. I honestly do not blame the officers who wanted to resign. Call me a coward, but if I were in their position, I'd be resigning too. I too value my life. The lengths that Light goes to hide the death note are so extra. I mean, if somebody were accidentally to light the desk on fire and trying to find the death note, like I'm sure they'd be suspicious of that trap. They wouldn't just be like, oh, how did I light this desk on fire? No, they'd be like, why does Light have a trap in which he lit his desk on fire? I'm just saying. Chapter 5. I feel like we get so much interesting information about Shinigami in this chapter, which I really appreciated. How Shinigami get extra life from humans, and apparently there is a way to kill a Shinigami, though it's not stated as to how you can kill one, but it makes me wonder if that's what it could come down to. Maybe L, being the super mega genius that he is, figures out a way to kill Ryuk. It seems their existence doesn't really have much meaning, other than the fact that they exist to kill, but otherwise they just sit around all day. But maybe Ryuk will kind of redefine what it means to be a Shinigami by the end of this, though Light thinks that Shinigami's existence is actually super meaningful in how they drop the Death Note and come down to kind of shake things up. So it turns out that human holders of the Death Note can make a deal with Shinigami, in which they can see what Shinigami can see, aka the names of people and how long they have till they die. But the trade-up is half of your life, which that is a big price to pay in my opinion. The question is, will Light ever get so desperate that he needs to make that deal? Seeing how passionately he is taking on this role of Kira, I wouldn't put it past him to at some point have to make that deal. I just feel like that seed being planted isn't worthless. I feel like at some point down the line, it's gonna come to a point where he does have to make that deal. Chapter 6. Light is getting really disturbing with the killings at this point, having the victims draw pictures and leave notes. He's really losing sight of his main goal. His main goal was to make the world a better place, but now he's brutally murdering these people in these really dramatic ways. We learn in this chapter how you can only leave natural acts that the person being killed would actually do in real life. Otherwise, they won't go through with the plan. So you have to write an act that isn't impossible and that can be completed. Chapter 7. Light's going on a date. Yeet yeet. Poor girl doesn't know what's in store though. And she thinks that Light is actually interested in her when he's only using her. Though I will say that he does put on a show and gives her a date that she'll never forget, which is high-key not a good thing. The way he tricks Ray to show him his ID. Like, I do not agree with what Light is doing. I just want to put that out there. But you can't deny the fact that he's a mastermind. And also how he causes the gunman to see Ryuk and just freak out. Like, terrible, but genius. Chapter 8. Everything goes just as Light as planned. Ray doesn't suspect him at all. I love that despite everything that had happened, the girl was like,
we are still going on this date, Light.
You can't ditch me that easily. Light proves himself to be the ultimate troll, seeing as the fact that his suicide notes add up to say, L, do you know gods of death love apples? Ray is also in town to meet his fiance's parents, and his fiance actually used to be an FBI agent as well. I didn't really like how Ray was all, you're here with me as my fiance, you're not allowed to help. Maybe had she helped, he wouldn't have been killed off along with 11 other agents. So now Light is going further than just killing off criminals, he's killing off people involved in the case. I get that it's a necessary part in the process for him, because he has to get rid of the people who are after him in order to keep on going, but I just feel like he's losing sight of his main goal. The goal was always to kill people who were doing evil acts, but the FBI agents were not doing evil acts, they were just trying to get to the bottom of Kira. I wish he would have figured out a way to get them off his tracks instead of killing them. There had to have been another way. The head of FBI is pulling them off the case, which makes sense because now they're being targeted. In this chapter, seeing Ray's fiance crying over the fact that Ray has died, and we know for sure that she's probably going to get involved knowing her background, knowing the fact that she was an FBI agent at one point. Chapter 9. We get to see how Light managed to take out all 12 FBI agents, which honestly, even though I hate the fact that he killed them all, he is a mastermind. The killings are becoming even more dramatic. Also, how is he even thinking up these plans? We see that this time Light got Ray to do his dirty work. It's so wild to me that nobody second guessed the request for all the names of the FBI agents and their faces. That is straight up a Kira request. You'd think that they wouldn't send over something like that so freely. But I guess because of the fact that it was a direct request from an agent, they didn't think anything of it. But still, I'm just like, how did they let that happen? Chapter 10. Ray's fiance is getting into the mix. I'm glad that they gave the police force the option to either stay involved in the case or to leave, because while they're used to putting their lives on the line, this is completely different. This is literally a case where somebody has complete control over the fact of whether you die or stay alive. Though I will say that it does suck that only a few remain on the case. Finally, they're all speaking about their concerns about L. Like, why has it taken so long to be like, yo, L is straight up suspicious? Of course, then L is like, fine, I'll do a meet and greet with you guys. I know you all want to meet me, but don't expect signatures. Chapter 11. I love that the first thing that L does when he meets the police officers is hold out his hand in the shape of a gun and says bang. What a way to say hello. But I guess he was just trying to get his point across that he wasn't Kira. Point made, L. I feel like we really get a sense for how intelligent L is in this chapter. I mean, throughout this whole book, we get to see how smart he is. He just thinks out everything to a T, and he has backup ideas and theories if something goes unexpectedly. I can't help but think that this is just going to lead to who can outsmart who. Chapter 12. Ray's fiance is getting into the mix at this point. Light is making a delivery to the police force, and they're talking. Ray's fiance gives him a fake name because she's a smart cookie. Light is a straight up player in how he so smoothly convinces Naomi that he's not Kira. He lets the lies just roll off his tongue as if it's nothing. You can tell that she's a former FBI agent and how she basically has nailed down what's happened. I just wish she wouldn't have fallen into Light's trap and that she would have paid attention to him more and realized that he's Kira. Light really would have been screwed had she made it to the police and had he not intercepted. I feel like she has so many key details that would have led the police right to Light. Chapter 13. I honestly loved seeing Light get played. It brought so much joy to me. He's writing down her fake name, trying to get her killed, and he gets a rude awakening when he realizes that he's gotten a fake name. It was just so much fun seeing him panic for a second. We get Watari's true identity at the end of this chapter. I remember when I first found out his true identity, I was like, oh, he's an old man? That's surprising. Honestly, my first theory when I read this volume was that I thought that Watari was L. Turns out he's not. Chapter 14. I love how one of the officers gets so excited and is just like, wow, it's like we're a top secret squad assigned to go after Kira. Like, can you not? Naomi has fallen into Light's trap and she's given Light her true name. I wish her FBI instincts would have sunk in, but it makes sense that they wouldn't because she's kind of being driven by her emotions at this point. She's being clouded by the grief of the passing of Ray, which makes sense as to why she would be so trusting in this situation. It's interesting that the police officer Aizawa walks right by them as Light's writing down her name. Like, did he see what was happening? Did he overhear any of what they were talking about? I'm very curious to see if we come back to that. It's so cruel and sad and twisted the way in which Naomi dies. I honestly wish we could have had her become more of a part of the investigation. Of course, in this manga full of men, we lose this girl that could have been so dope to have around. Chapter 15. I can't with people calling into the police and being like, I think I'm Kira. why. I saw someone on the news and I thought that they should die, and the next thing I know, they ended up dead. And the scene where Light's accessing files on his dad's computer and he's talking about the fact that he feels like no files have been updated recently, don't you think that they'd be able to see the fact that the files had been accessed from Yagami's home at kind of suspicious times? Am I crazy for thinking that? I mean, I don't think that this series was released in a time where we had the technology that we have today, but I don't know, I feel like they'd be able to track down that information. At the end of this chapter, we find out that they're going to install cameras in Yagami's household. Oh snap, this is going to make things complicated. Chapter 16. I appreciated the dad's willingness to have the cameras be installed in his home. It proves his dedication in taking down Kira, even if that means finding out that one of his family members is in fact involved. So, jokes on him, his son is Kira. Light is quickly aware of the fact that someone has been in his room. It must have been so hard not to talk to Ryuk during that scene because the Shinigami wouldn't shut up. Light is just one step ahead of everyone, how it wasn't even the paper and the door falling that let him know that somebody had entered his room. It's all in the door handle and the lead and the hinges. Like, homeboy is too smart. Chapter 17. So Light has to make it to where it looks like he doesn't have access to information, but people are still dying. Light the playa is back. He goes on acting like nothing is happening. He has family dinner, then he goes to his room to study, and he still manages to play Kira for a bit without being discovered. Which that scene, which despite the fact of what Light is actually doing, is so iconic. I always think about that scene when I think about this series, how he has the TV and the potato chips, and he's acting like he's studying, and yet he's still managing to kill people. How the heck did he even get that TV and the potato chips? Did I miss that part? Either way, iconic. So those are all my thoughts on the first two volumes of Death Note. Now I'm going to be answering a few questions that you guys submitted on the Manga Monday Book Club Instagram. So let's Q&A it up. Who do you think is smarter, Light or L? At this point, I honestly feel like they're at an equal playing field. They continue to outsmart each other, which I think is what makes part of the series so interesting. If you were one of the people assigned to the Kira investigation, would you resign or would you stay on board? Honestly, I have the utmost respect for everybody who stays on the case, but I would not be able to do it unless I had the same kind of protection that L has, where I'm not giving my full name and I'm constantly on the move. Otherwise, count me out. Did you watch the Netflix adaptation? No, and I refuse to watch it because of the bad things I've heard. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. Now it's your turn to hit up the comments and discuss with me, discuss all your thoughts. How did you feel about Light? How do you feel about L? What do you think is gonna happen next? Let me know all your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, if you've already read this full series, do not give any spoilers, please. There's a lot of people who still haven't read this full series yet, so please, if you know anything that's gonna happen in the future, don't let us know. I'll be in the comments all day today responding to your comments, so let's discuss. If you like this video, be sure to go and hit that like button. If you wanna see more bookish videos from me, be sure to go and hit subscribe or go and hit that bell icon and you'll be notified every time I post new videos. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope your day is bright and that tomorrow is brighter. Keep reading what your heart desires and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye.